Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sheryl McCumsey, founder of Pesticide Free Alberta. Welcome back to the show, Sheryl.
Hello, Jim.
Sheryl, one of the things we're going to talk about today, chronic diseases and their connection to this polluted world that we live in, full of toxins and unknown substances to science until a few years ago. Can you maybe talk about that?
Yeah, I'll just mention a few chronic health diseases which are massive, and sometimes I'm surprised that there isn't more people out there that are aware of them, or that we don't have every medical officer in health in some kind of state of shock about the chronic disease effects in Canada. But for starters, we have more than 20 million Canadians suffering from some kind of digestive disorder every year, and that's according to the Canadian Digestive Health Foundation, and that's increased from 10 million in 10 years. So we're talking about all kinds of gut diseases, like every kind, out there. But what is also very remarkable is that Canada is really a leader in the world with the greatest increase of celiac disease, 35% increase actually in the past few decades. As most people know, celiac is a disease that's associated with ingesting gluten and so on. It's rather remarkable that Canada is such a leader. Like, why do we have more of it here than other countries? And then we also have about 23,000 Canadians diagnosed with colon cancer. And about 9,500 of those die of the disease every year. And this makes colon cancer the third most common cancer behind prostate and breast cancer, and the second most common cause of cancer deaths in this country. Now, we could talk about a lot of things. I mean, they talk about things like cutting out sugar and avoiding processed foods and eating more probiotics, etc. But what has changed in our food system in the last 10 or 20 years? This is the thing that people should be asking, because we've had processed foods, we've had sugar, we've had all these things in our environment before, but all of a sudden we have massive increases of diseases, and we have people dying from colon cancer. Well, they talk about antibiotics as well, about wiping out any and all bacteria in your gut, and this is very bad for your microbiome, and I think most people know this. And of course, we know that there are exposures to this in our food system. But one thing that I don't hear anyone talking about is the fact that glyphosate is registered on the patent as an antimicrobial. It is an antimicrobial. It lists gut flora on the patent it kills, and science illustrates to us that even below acceptable limits of exposure, this damages the gut microbiome. So that's remarkable. Then we have about, it's remarkable, since 2008, we have people living with kidney failure in Canada that's grown by, get this, 35%. 35%. That's pretty big. The numbers, I had to write some of this down. I'm kind of flipping my page. It is the 10th leading cause of mortality, non-accidental cause of mortality. And so it's pretty serious. We have, now I'm looking for the numbers that I had here, but kidney disease has increased dramatically in Canada. And there certainly is science in the world. There's two big public health researchers who battle powerful corporate interests to uncover the effects of industrial herbicides, which means glyphosate, again, that claimed tens of thousands of lives in Sri Lanka and throughout the world. And this is affecting, so now we go off to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is affecting 7 million Canadians. 7 million Canadians are affected by non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And also, most Canadians don't know what kinds of things they would look for that would lead to this. Then we also have about 1/3 of the Canadian population that are not getting adequate amounts of magnesium in their diet. Now, when we look at the fact that we have a mental health issue in this country, that about 50% of the population by age 40 is going to have a mental health illness, and that magnesium is a very important requirement for healthy brain function, and there's studies showing it is more effective than antidepressants in treatment. Isn't it interesting that glyphosate holds on to or chelates magnesium, meaning it makes it unavailable to both the plant and to us in our diet? So I'm only talking about a few health effects that are linked to this herbicide in particular, but there are many other diseases we're seeing increases of, chronic diseases in Canada, that our health system is just not going to be able to handle.
Well, faced with all of these things, of course, it must be super frustrating when I'm sure you've expressed your concerns to the people in charge, elected officials, and so on. And what kind of a response do you get when you bring these things up?
Well, I've contacted a number of people who are involved in research in gut health, for example, because I thought this is remarkable. And it's remarkable that when you look at residues that we're finding in our food or how much glyphosate we're using, like we've increased pesticide in Canada by 40% in 5 years. Most of that is glyphosate. And we're seeing it in our food. For sure, we're seeing it in our food. In some cases, even above acceptable limits of exposure, however we determine that. But what's remarkable is when I contact these people, basically, it's like their hands are tied. Everybody requires funding to do a study. And where are you going to get your funding if you have a lot of pharmaceutical companies that are interested in treating these diseases? So, of course, there's treatments for disease, for all of these diseases. How effective they are for some people is another question and another thing that I think is a concern. But it doesn't address the cause of these diseases. It treats the symptom, because you can't stop taking the drug and then expect that all of a sudden your irritable bowel disease is going to disappear. So what's causing it? So we're not really looking so much at the cause as we're looking at drugs for treatment. And that's what I see everywhere. I see people getting funding from pharmaceutical companies to look for treatments because that's where they can get the money for their studies. But where's the money going to come from to do these studies? Well, what's happened over a period of time since, this 1970s and 1980s is in Canada, corporate subsidies just continue to rise and go up to companies that really don't need it. And our universities are struggling then to have the funding to do the science that would benefit all Canadians.
Now, we always say, is there a conspiracy by these companies to control the government, or is it because politicians don't have to take any formal training, have a certificate? There's only two jobs, really, that don't need formal training or a diploma, and that's being a parent and being a politician. So is this a case of perhaps politicians just aren't qualified to deal with issues like this?
Well, I'm going to give you some examples of what has happened to people who've tried to deal with these problems. I mean, there are well-documented cases, and there's many of them. But
okay, Sheryl, we'll talk about those cases when we come back from the break.
Okay.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the 2019 drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Grand Portage Resources' Herbert Gold Project in southeast Alaska highlights increased gold resource, indicated and inferred, of 860,000 ounces, in excess of 10 grams per ton gold. Expansion drilling is planned on the Herbert Gold property for the summer of 2019. Grand Portage Resources trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sheryl McCumsey. Sheryl, just before we went to break, you mentioned that scientists who bring up problems in the environment and with the things that we're eating, drinking, breathing, what happens to these people?
Well, there's the old case. CBC Fifth Estate did a segment a number of years ago on how 3 Health Canada employees were fired for standing up against allowing bovine growth hormone in our milk production. And that was in the courts for years. It's kind of forgotten about. But more recently, the New Brunswick government gave $720,000 in severance to Dr. English Cleary, who was the chief medical officer of health there, fired in 2015. And it seems that people have tried to get down to the bottom of why that happened, but it happened right around the time that she was investigating glyphosate and the harm that this involves, especially since this is used quite extensively in forestry in New Brunswick. And as well, not only was she fired, but also two people in the forestry college, a Gerald Redmond, who was the former director of the Maritime College of Everest Technology. He was told that his services were no longer needed when he kind of stood with Rod Cumberland, a wildlife biologist, who has been pointing out that there is a wildlife decline, and it's probably due to glyphosate wiping out food sources and impacting the deer and moose populations. And more recently, a Quebec scientist, Louis Robert, was fired as well. And he was trying to point out some concerns as well. He was told when he was concerned about how Quebec's public body on grain research was mostly funded, it was funded by the ministry, that their head of this is also the president of a trade group of producers and is a lobbyist. And so this man has spoken against excessive regulation. They say excessive regulation, but it's really a joke, if you ask me, of pesticides. And he also noticed that this public research body was filled with corporate representatives. So as this man has been pointing these matters out, he was basically told to shut up and not speak about it anymore, and eventually he was fired. So it's like if someone tries to speak out about corporate influence in government, they're fired. While this is going on, by the way, the ministry says that there has been 15 employee resignations, including 7 researchers since 2016, out of 35 employees. Wow. Now, this is a pretty important story, and it was widely reported, but I bet a lot of Canadians still haven't heard about it. But this is in Quebec and New Brunswick, but these things are happening all across Canada. And some of them don't get reported. Some of them are kept quiet. I know things have gone on in other places that have not been reported. What's happening in Canada is corporate influence over our government is huge, and it's a threat to anyone that tries to stand up against it. It's been going on for a long time. It's not just with one government, it's with several. And if Canadians do not make this an issue in a big way, it's going to get much worse.
Well, isn't that what the SNC-Lavalin thing's all about? Corporate influence over government.
Totally. I mean, what's really remarkable is that for the first time in a long time, our federal minister of health, Jane, she was actually a doctor, and she was taking a stand and saying that, and a lot of things that Canadians don't know as well, is that when the Pest Management Regulatory Agency was audited by the federal auditor, he mentioned that 36 pesticides have had conditional registrations and are still on the market. Well, do Canadians know what that means? That means these pesticides have not had the required science submitted before they were registered. Well, we're talking about science. Where's the science here? So this woman has taken a stand and should be, held in high esteem for taking a stand and saying no more conditional registrations. I mean, why would we ever have them in the first place is remarkable. We shouldn't have them. They should be, outlawed entirely. It shouldn't be a question. But now she's gone, and so is our Attorney General. So do I feel, though, that the Conservatives will be better? Absolutely not. Do I think they'll be better? They'll probably even be worse. But what are Canadians going to do when both forms of government seem to subsidize corporations with tax dollars, and we all suffer wondering how we're going to have enough money to pay for health care or for our education? It's massive. It's massive, and it's having a huge impact on our health. I mean, the chronic health effects in Canada are unbelievable. More people are sick in this country than healthy.
We'll have more with Sheryl McCumsey right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sheryl McCumsey. Sheryl, is this the perfect opportunity during an election campaign to question our politicians about their policies, about the health and safety of our environment?
Yes, and I think if people really care enough, they will look at the policies that are being written into each party's, stance. How are they addressing concerns here? One thing that's really remarkable is we talk about, gross national product, and that's a measure of how things are going so well in Canada. Well, do Canadians realize that an oil spill, the profits from cleaning up an oil spill, for example, are included with that? I mean, that's pretty remarkable. So damage that happens to our environment is included as a profit. It does not include how healthy we are. It does not include how happy we are. It does not include how well educated we are. And those are the markers that when you improve health and education in a country, we move them from a third world to a first world nation. That's how you change the status of a nation. If we want to address things like the population explosion, improve your health and education of a country, and the growth rates stabilize, they change. This is history. This is history, and this is what's happened many, many times. We see this, but it's remarkable that our leaders are so fixated on corporate profits as opposed to what's really happening to people and what's happening with their tax dollars. So for sure, this is the best time to be asking these questions.
A new study has found tea drinkers may be a little upset to find out that the so-called premium brand single servings of tea in so-called silk containers, tea bags, contain billions of particles of nano and microplastics. So instead of enjoying a nice cup of just tea, you're also getting a nice dose of plastic. And they say what comes out of the tea bag is at a much higher rate than it does from other food and beverage sources. Is it surprising that this has been found?
I'm not surprised at that. I mean, one of the really remarkable things is that so many people buy bottled water because they think this is better, not knowing that there really is no regulation in that industry either, or that there's been studies showing massive amounts of plastic in bottled water. So what are you paying for? What are you really paying for? You know, not to mention how much plastic garbage this creates that doesn't actually get recycled, most of it. So we should be protecting our water in the first place by not polluting it. And most Canadians think we have massive amounts of water and it's all clean and pristine, but it's not. That's not really the truth anymore. We're polluting our water at an incredible rate, and we don't test our water a lot of the time to see if there's contaminants in there. I know even in our own community here, pesticides are not tested, period. They don't look for them. And I happen to know that where we get our water from, they do spray pesticides around that area, or they have in the past. So we kind of have assumed that things are going a certain way, but and then when someone just brushes it off and says, "Oh, don't worry," if you don't actually see a report, I don't think you can trust that. You actually have to ask to see the evidence and know that these things are not what you think. The best thing to do in our lives is to make it really simple. So, I mean, in a way, to avoid these kinds of things, buy organic loose tea. You can get loose organic tea. That's probably the best way to avoid a lot of things. Simple things. The more things we put in our house, the more things we're likely going to be exposed to without knowing. One of the things I came across recently is very interesting is a coating. I was told you could get a wood floor that would filter your air out of toxins. And I was like, now how does that work? How does that happen? I'd like to know how that works. Well, apparently there's a nanotechnology coating that you can put on your floor, on your wooden floor, that will take contaminants out of the air. That's not enough information, and most people have no idea how that works or what the studies are showing about nanotechnology and how this is another thing that's not regulated again. So you're just depending on the industry itself to tell you that this is going to work without knowing if it does or not.
Well, two things that do work, I know. Spider plants and English ivy will remove contaminants from your interior air. A friend of mine painted their condo, and they're complaining about the paint fumes, and I told them about those two particular plants, and they said a week later the smell was gone.
It's amazing what nature can do all by itself.
Yeah.
We've forgotten how well it works.
And water lilies apparently can metabolize mercury.
Interesting.
Yeah, so a waterway, so I'm just looking at, near where I live, there's lots of water lilies in the pond, and I thought, that's probably a very healthy pond.
Well, I do know that they've used mushrooms in, Chernobyl. Mushrooms, sunflowers are two plants that have been used for remediation, which is really interesting. I wouldn't probably want to eat those things after they've been growing there. But nature is really amazing. We want to mess with so many things, not understanding really what we're doing without studying what's already there. I don't know why we don't spend more time doing that.
Sheryl, what can we do as citizens to get the government to sit up and pay more attention to our concerns about what's in our food and water and air?
Well, personally myself, like doing the kinds of things I guess that I'm doing, where I'm collecting this information and saying to them, what you're saying you're doing, you're really not doing. I mean, it's quite shocking when you realize that you're told that every pesticide on the market is apparently safe, and then when you start checking, you see, well, that's not true at all. There's certainly risks involved, but how are they determining whether it's acceptable or not? And this is having a high cost. It's not just for each of us personally. It's for every single Canadian, regardless of your stature in life. I mean, I read about people who've been doing things who, I don't appreciate what they've been doing in government, and I see they get sick too. So it's everyone out there. You can't escape this. This stuff is found in the Arctic, in the ice dating back decades. It does not go away. We're told it just kind of breaks down, goes away. What does it break down into? So we have to slow down. So in our own own life, we can certainly simplify things a whole lot more to prevent ourselves from being exposed. I think I'm far more resilient now, having been on an organic diet for a number of years. I don't think I could handle the things I know and not be depressed without having a good, healthy diet. I think I'm more resilient. I think other people learn that as well. So we just need to keep trying to inform everyone around us, not just government, but everyone around us, and collaborate and work together.
Sheryl, where can people go if they want to get more information about this?
Yes, so I have some people now kind of, like we have a page, Pesticide Free Canada, and we really haven't been promoting that a lot on Facebook. There's a few people that are helping me with that now. And I am kind of busy right now. I guess you could say politically right now I'm kind of involved with some things and about to move actually in the next month. So I'm kind of busy with these things. But it is my ambition to get a number of people together across Canada to try to work together on these issues. So we just have a Facebook page right now, and you can contact us that way if you want. I hope people will take the time to educate themselves, because regardless of whether you're feeling ill yourself, you're going to know someone who is, because the cancer rates and everything out there are just terrific. We're all being touched by this, whether we know it or not.
Sheryl, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Jim.
My guest has been Sheryl McCumsey, founder of Pesticide Free Alberta. If you have any questions for Sheryl or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.